It's not about being brave or about pushing the boundaries. It's actually just about being really smart with the money that you have. When you work for an agency, you spend a lot of time thinking about your own sort of individual problems, the individual problems of your brands, and it's quite a sort of insular view that you end up having. Whereas today, it's a really good opportunity for all of the agencies to come together and all learn from each other. And it's just a really great time to actually just stop from the day-to-day busyness and actually just sort of think about, well, this is a really good opportunity to come away and learn a lesson or two from other agencies that you might not necessarily encounter in your day-to-day job. One of the case studies that I actually enjoyed the most was around the sort of approach to disability. I guess there was sort of two things that I liked about it. One is that we're currently doing a lot of work ourselves on ensuring that our communications are much more conscious of sort of accessibility, and particularly the disabled community, which quite often reflects quite a significant proportion of a population. But the second thing was, and it was quite refreshing to sort of hear, is one of the things as strategists that I think we quite often forget is that actually it's our job to talk to people and find out not only what they have to say, but also, I guess, use that to inspire about the way that we talk to them in our communications. And I just felt like it might be a really sort of basic 101 lesson, but it was a really good reminder that we're ultimately here to serve consumers, people, as well as brands. And I thought it was just quite a refreshing lesson to get out from behind your desk and actually just go and have a talk with the people that you're trying to reach. We've kind of got this view that New Zealand is on the edge of the world. And when you're on the edge of the world, you kind of need to actually think about things a little bit differently, and you look at things a little bit differently. And what it actually ends up meaning is that you become slightly more innovative in your approach to problems, because New Zealand historically has been a difficult place to reach, for example. So we kind of have to use some what we would call Kiwi Ingenuity, I guess, to sort of think our way around problems. And whilst many people might not see us being on the edge of the world as necessarily a sort of weakness, we actually see it as being a real benefit because it gives us quite a unique worldview. I work on tours in New Zealand, so it's probably a very easy example to kind of give. Look, ultimately, I think it's a really difficult balance to strike, because you've got to be true to the brand and true about what the brand offers. And I also think one of the major challenges that we face is when you need to reach lots of different markets with essentially one marketing budget, it can become very fragmented very quickly. So for me, the challenge is, I guess, to try and identify how you can have a really core strategy and a core idea that perhaps execution can be delivered slightly differently in each market. But it's a difficult balance to strike, because if you did a different campaign for each market that is also not necessarily true to your brand, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And economies of scale is actually a really big consideration in decision making around that. So I spent much of my career working with big global brands where the sort of mantra is, which I think Coca-Cola coined back in the day, is, think globally, but try and act locally where possible. The way that you consume a brand is different to how it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. I actually think that's why a lot of brands have moved towards, apart from the obvious economies of scale reason, but moved towards more of a global strategy and quite often a global core creative idea as well, because they do know that we do live in a more transient world where I'm pretty sure there's some statistics that show people move around more than they ever have before. I think that's why brands do sort of seek to have a much more centralized global strategy and core idea. But quite often, that still leaves plenty of flexibility to execute locally. So there's no reason why you can't do both. Product placement has existed in advertising for many, many, many years. If you look at the most recent series of Succession, their US TV show, there's literally hundreds of brands in the last season alone. Product placement has doubled in the last 5 years, from I think being worth about 13 billion industry to about 26 billion. So it's a really big thing that is on people's plate and minds. But I think the difference between in product placement and what we did is that we felt like it was a very natural part of the storyline versus, say, something like Wayne's World, which very famously did a sketch around product placement and just how often it's just shoved in to a TV program or film. I think that there's a lot of product placement. I think that it's something that is just not done well. I think what the Partners Life case study demonstrates is that you can bring creativity to product placement, and that's an opportunity. I love when I hear people talk about the work that we've done, and when I say people, I don't just mean other people in our industry. I mean the media, friends, family. I still kind of feel like when knowing the stats that I know about advertising and just how much people try and avoid it, how rarely people notice it, it's quite satisfying knowing that you've really impressed people and you've made a piece of communication that they actually really like. And that's still a big part of why I get up and go in to advertising every single day. I think if I was to sort of say the only kind of real frustration that I have, because I love this industry, is that I feel like this word bravery is bandied around way too much. It's not really that brave to do what we did for Partners Life. I would actually just say it's common sense. You know, we did an idea that got spoken about, that got people more interested in life insurance. There's nothing particularly profound or brave around that. And I quite often feel like by using that term, we're nearly turning clients and brands off the idea of doing work because they feel like that perhaps that they're taking too much of a risk. So my pet peeve right now is this idea of bravery. I feel like doing work like that isn't being brave, it's just doing a sensible right thing that gets spoken about and does a great job for a brand. Most of our clients are definitely pushing the boundaries, but I think a big part of that is trying to delete words like risk-taking and pushing the boundaries from our lexicon, because really what we should be talking about is objectives and budgets and whether or not the idea that we are creating for that brand is actually capable of achieving their objective based on the budget they have. Because when you kind of like talk about it in those sort of real terms, you realize that actually it's not about being brave or about pushing the boundaries. It's actually just about being really smart with the money that you have, knowing that consumers don't probably really want to pay too much attention to what you have to say. That's the start point for pretty much every brief that should be on every single brief at the top. People do not actually want to hear what you have to say, and getting noticed should probably be the first line on every single brief. Demonstrate your eagerness, because I've learned so much in my time in the industry, and I feel like it's impossible to know everything when you start out, and kind of coming in knowing that you don't know everything is totally fine, and you'll learn as you go. But one thing that is really difficult to get is people who are really eager. And when I see that, I just automatically am drawn to it because I know they want to learn, I know they want to be successful, and I know that they want to do a good job for an agency and the brands they work on. So still my favorite trait to see in someone.